Hi, my name is Dr. Julie Westcott. I'm a chiropractor, athletic trainer, and nutrition specialist. I also teach high school health science, and I'm happy to be part of Teen Esteem. I hope you'll enjoy the following presentation and find it
So
informative.
the two that we're going to focus on are anorexia nervosa. So it's actually anorexia by itself just means loss of appetite. So if you ever see that on any of your medication, don't worry. You're not going to develop an eating disorder. It just means that you're going to lose your appetite potentially. So anorexia nervosa. Basic way to describe it is it's someone that just refuses to maintain a normal body weight. Okay, they'll be below 85% of normal. So if they're supposed to weigh 100 pounds, they'll be below 85 pounds. They will not let themselves gain weight. They're absolutely and completely obsessed with not gaining weight, and they will do anything to not gain weight, okay? Again, usually starting young age. Like I said, it can start younger, but usually 12-ish, 11, 12. And for this one, I like to give people sort of an emotion to represent it. This is the control person. So this is your ballerina. This is your type A, straight A student, just perfectionist, totally organized, everything. I have everything under control type of personality in general, okay? And when I've worked with these girls, that's generally what we find, right? They're dancers, they're whatever they end up being because they want to be very controlled, and that's how they do it. They are going to have some signs that you will be able to see. Always talking about food, okay? When I would work with them, we would make them eat, and I would say, don't talk about food at all during this whole meal. Because, we do, oh, this is good, that is good. Don't say one thing about food. Really hard, because that's what they focus on, right? So preoccupation with food, calories. How many calories is this? How many calories is that? You know what, if you're a kid, it really doesn't matter. I mean, if you're eating a fairly well-balanced diet, it doesn't matter if this has 300 calories and that has 250 calories. I feel sad when I hear kids so focused on that because it shouldn't be such a big focus. Distorted body image basically means, like I was saying, they look in the mirror, the reflection they see is not what you and I see, okay? So we would do an exercise where I would have them draw the outline of their body, the size that they believe it is. And then we would trace their actual body, and you could see how much smaller it was, right? Just to give them that sort of visual cue of, this is not really what you look like, but in their mind, that is what they look like. Frequent weighing is another common one. I don't know about you, but I try not to weigh myself ever, but if I do, it might be once a month, or when you go to the doctor. I'm talking about weighing 10 to 30 times per day. Okay, so that would be frequent weighing. Before you eat, after you eat, before you go to the bathroom, after you go to the bathroom. Just, it's obsessive, right? You gotta think about that sort of patterning that's going on. Get the scales out of your house. If you got girls, get the scales out of your house. You do not need them in your house. Your clothes can be your guide. If your clothes don't fit, you've probably gained a little weight, but use the clothes and not the scale, because the scale is just a number. It fluctuates very frequently. Most of us know that. You have that sort of 5-pound range up and down. Some people it's 10, right? But just, if you can get it out of your house, I think it really makes a big difference. Another characteristic would be something like, oh, I don't eat fats. I don't eat carbs, right? I'm not gonna eat that entire food group. Well, that's not really how our bodies work. We need to eat a balance of food. So I always say, well, why don't you eat that? Well, it's bad for me. Oh, really? Because you need fat to grow your nails and your hair and your skin, right? So it's a lot of times something where it's, they're not educated enough, but they just know somebody said this was bad, so I better not do it. So, obviously if there are allergies or health-related things, that's a whole different picture, but this is just all of a sudden, like I had a friend who was eating meat all her life and then decided she was gonna be vegetarian because it has a lot of calories, right? That's not a good reason. If you have a spiritual or some kind of other reasonable reason, ethical reason, that's totally different. But it's just that sort of switch all of a sudden, I'm not gonna eat that. Food rituals are also something like that, where you have to eat it in this certain order. And I always tell people, it gets all mixed up in there anyway, right? So it doesn't matter if you eat the meat and then this and that. So excessive chewing, separating food, all that stuff. Sometimes kids do that, but in general, you don't wanna allow those kind of things to continue, or maybe just talk about it. How come you're doing that? What does that mean to you? That kind of thing. And then if they avoid meals or other situations. So I'll see this, I work with teenagers, mostly like high school age. Sally doesn't ever come when we go out to eat, she comes later. Or she's already eaten when she gets there. That kind of thing where they're just trying to avoid it so they don't have to deal with it. So why is this a problem? Well, basically they're starving themselves to death, right? They're reducing their calories and restricting their food so much that they're going to develop health consequences. Because what happens if I don't give my body enough protein? My body's very smart, right? So it's going to take protein from somewhere else. And where's my protein? Muscles, heart muscle, right? It's going to just start breaking that down and go, okay, you didn't give it to me, I'm going to take it out of your body. If I don't give it calcium, guess where it's getting that from? The bones. So one of the consequences these guys have: muscle loss, muscle weakness, osteoporosis. I have a friend who's 30 and already has osteoporosis because she had an eating disorder for 12 years. At 30, you can't fix that, right? You got to hopefully maintain it, but you can't fix it. So those two are big ones to me. Another thing, and I know I'm talking mostly about girls, this absolutely happens in boys as well. Wrestlers, gymnasts, dancers, it's a big problem, and it's becoming more and more common in boys. But the heart muscle that I mentioned, they can have a lot of heart consequences. In fact, the girls that I know that have passed away from this, which about 20% of them do, it's like 1 in 5 anorexics don't make it. So we really want to make sure that we stop this before it starts, right? Most of them would pass away from a heart attack because the heart has been broken down to such a point that it just can't keep functioning, okay? So that's really important. Dehydration, obviously, would be something. Kidney failure is a long-term result of that. Hair loss, loss of menstruation happens in girls. If they don't have enough body fat, they actually can't function hormonally correctly. So we do see this in a lot of like track athletes. They're so thin because they're very, very fit, but we got to make sure that they're eating enough because they need to maintain that normal cycle. That's important. So those are kind of, for anorexia, the consequences. Now, one of the girls that I would just mention, and she passed away about 4 years ago, I think, and I worked with her in 2006. Beautiful, beautiful girl. If you remember Precious Moments dolls, she looked like one of those, right? Just gorgeous, little ballerina. Her dad was, the #1 heart surgeon in Dallas. She was just, up there and very smart, wanted to be a doctor, and just absolutely beautiful and absolutely stuck in anorexia. She'd been to 4 treatment centers. She'd been in the hospital multiple times. It's as many times, I would just look at her and go, "You're so beautiful. How do you not see that?" And she'd say, "I just want to look like you." And I'm like, "You weigh 40 pounds less than I do." And they literally can't see it. They literally have this, facade of what they look like. I left from where she was, and at the time that she died, she was a little bit shorter than me. She weighed 67 pounds. Amazing to me that her body kept her alive that long. I'm pretty impressed with how amazingly intricate our bodies are that they can fight for that long. But that's how sick it is. It's just that 1 more pound, just 1 more pound. Then I'll be okay, just 1 more pound. So it's really, you can kind of see the psychological aspect of it when you really think about it that way. Was it really about food? No, right? It's about that I need to get to something so I'm good enough. On the opposite end, in a lot of ways, is bulimia. So you have anorexia, you've got that sort of controlling perfectionist, whatnot. The bulimic is usually more the risk taker. They're a little bit angry, they're just a little bit like, I don't care what everybody's doing. So it's going to be a little bit more of a impulsive kind of personality, okay? Anorexics are a little easier to pick out. If I'm walking on the trail, I can pick them out pretty easily. I'm like, yeah, okay, you don't look like you're enjoying your run very much, Bulimia, they're pretty good at hiding it, actually. So the characteristics of this would be very large intakes of food, called binging, right? And I don't mean like, wow, I had 2 hamburgers. I mean, you ate 5,000 calories at one time, right? A lot of food, okay? And then they will choose they'll have a period of guilt, and then they'll choose some method to get rid of it, okay? So they may use laxatives to speed it along. They may throw it up, which is what most people assume bulimia is all about, but it's just one way. Or one of the less common ones would be, less commonly known, I should say, is what we call exercise bulimia. So I go and eat all that food, and then I go run for 5 hours. That's a little excessive, right? Unless you're training for a marathon, right? So the whole idea is binge, trying to feed the hole, and then they go, uh-oh, I shouldn't have done that. I got to get rid of it. And that's kind of the thought process, and then they choose one of those ways to get rid of it. again, they are concerned with their shape. And a lot of times, actually, bulimia is almost scarier because they'll pop back and forth. They'll be anorexic for a while, then they'll do the bulimia thing, then they'll go back and forth. So it's a little bit different. A lot of times alcoholism is also connected with bulimia. So the personality for this, again, the disease is about anger. So anorexia is very controlled. This one, they're very angry. I'll never forget what I saw. We were doing some psychological work with one of the girls. She was acting like she was throwing up, but she was screaming, just absolutely at the top of her lungs screaming. And I thought, wow, that is the best visualization of how angry they are. They're just trying to get it out. And the anger is so strong that for whatever reason, they can't control. Their parents got divorced, they moved, they changed schools, whatever it is, they're just angry, and this is how they're trying to deal with it. So signs, usually, evidence of binging. You went to Costco and where did all the food go, that kind of thing. Or there's a lot of wrappers in the trash. And when they get good, they're usually good at like hiding it, so you might find it in a bag under their bed or something to that degree. But if you think this is going on, be mindful of how much food is in your house and where did it go? Do you know where it went? Purging behaviors, again, do I need to go to the bathroom immediately after I eat? That's a bad sign. We used to lock the bathrooms for an hour after meals when I worked with the girls. So too bad, you can't go. Go before, but you can't go right after because that's what they're doing, right? So if you see that happening, it's kind of like, why don't you go before next time? That kind of thing. Just sort of be mindful of this stuff. For the exercise piece, if they have to exercise no matter what, it's snowing outside, there's a thunderstorm, they're like, I have got to run 5 miles or I am gonna, I'm gonna gain this weight, right? Because in their mind, they're like, anything to get rid of these calories. Anything like discoloration of teeth is sort of a longer term one, but if I'm vomiting a lot, right? What's in my stomach? Acid. What does acid do to porcelain? Eats it up, right? The enamel of the teeth. So you'll see more like a brownish color of the teeth, or eventually the teeth can actually fall out if you go way long term. But just anything with the teeth like that. The only sign that's a little bit obvious to me, just knowing where this gland is, but if you vomit a lot, there's a little gland here that will actually swell up, so they get kind of this little chipmunk cheek kind of looking thing. And that would just be because it's irritated from the acid. So this one's a little trickier to pick out because you really have to be looking for these signs of things going on. And obviously any guilt or shame around food, why? Talk to them about it. Don't just let it go because this stuff will just fester and grow in them, okay? Health consequences for bulimia, a little bit different. Okay, we still have heart issues because if I'm not eating or I'm not letting the food process in my stomach, so either I'm speeding it through or I'm bringing it back out, I'm not picking up the electrolytes I need, the sodium, potassium, calcium, that kind of stuff. So electrolyte imbalance is a really big problem, right? People end up in the hospital with low salt or low potassium, that kind of stuff. So that can lead to dehydration, heart problems, that kind of thing. They can rupture their stomach if they eat too much. It's a lot of food. So you gotta remember your stomach's the size of your fist generally. It can stretch a little bit, but if you eat that much, definitely a problem. Esophageal ruptures, your esophagus is your throat. So if I am continually running hydrochloric acid over my throat, it can wear down, and that is, for bulimia, probably the most serious consequence. They can actually die almost immediately from that if they have that long-term problem. And then tooth decay I talked about. If they're a laxative abuser, the colon, right, can break down to the point where they have to have it removed. I had one girl, she was 19, and she'd had 36 inches of her intestine removed already just from laxative abuse. So the problem, I think, with these types of disorders is not only the psychological impact, but the physical impact. So if it doesn't kill them, it can leave them with consequences, like I said, the osteoporosis or a loss of part of their system, or any kind of menstrual issues. I mean, it's definitely something to be concerned about.